Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So today, Graham, we've got a lady from North Carolina with us who's going to talk to us all about health-powered productivity.
She is, I already know this, but she is an absolute gem. You are really going to enjoy this next few minutes with Marcey Rader. Marcey, welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you. I already feel amazing just from that introduction.
So we can only go downhill from here, Graham.
No. You help people save time, don't you?
I do. Well, it's helping them find the time that they swear isn't there.
Right. Okay.
We all have
I suppose saving time's a bit of a weird expression, really, because you can't really save time, can you? But the fact it keeps ticking away. But you can use the time in a much more productive way, and that's what you help people with.
Yes, in a more intentional way.
Right. So tell me more about what does intentional mean in this context? Just imagine that we're really dim.
That's I'm putting it into clear words. Most people, at least the ones that I work with, go throughout their day just reacting.
Right.
To people, to agendas, to devices, and not really fully intentional with their time. Even, what am I going to do in the next 5 minutes? What am I going to do in the next 15 minutes? I have a 30-minute block. What am I going to do? And instead, letting devices or pings dictate what it is that we're going to do.
Yeah. So
that's what I mean by intentional.
Those devices, they've really come into our lives. I mean, I had a friend, he's no longer with us, unfortunately, but he was a beta tester for Google. I mean, this was back in the day. And if I'd have been really bright, which I've already said that I'm not, I'd have bought Google because they were like brilliant. And I was one of the first to know about it in my community. And I was just thinking, this is fantastic. And everybody else was struggling. The world's changed so much in our careers. Ours probably, I'm going to be diplomatic here, longer than yours. So basically, in that time frame, the world's changed. We've got these things called mobile phones. It used to be bricks, and it used to be actual phones that you'd go to in a little red box in our country. The world's changed. Has it changed for the better, Marcey?
Well, first of all, I love those little red boxes in your country because I went to college in London for a while, and I have fond memories of calling my husband, who was then my boyfriend, from that little red box on the corner. But I am not someone in this realm that thinks devices are evil, because they're absolutely not.
No.
They are a wonderful tool that can help us maintain connection, but it is not a substitute for connection with other people. And they are useful tools when we are not allowing ourselves to be dictated by them. And what I see is more that people let their devices own their agenda rather than them owning the device. And there is, when you hear the term that, social media is addictive, email is addictive, my phone is addictive. I mean, there's actually a term called NoMoPhoBia. And it is the fear of being without your phone. NoMoPhoBia is the fear of being without your phone. And, I just spoke with someone last week that was in the car, drove 20 minutes, realized they forgot their phone, and drove back to get their phone, even though they were going to be at work in front of a computer with the same access that they would have on their phone. They still was late for work because they couldn't be without their phone. It made them just feel ill.
It's shocking. I know Kevin's far more technically adroit than me.
It's funny. That situation happened to me a few Saturdays ago. That I'd left the house and I was probably 15 minutes down the road, and realised I hadn't picked a phone up. And I thought, well, very nearly turned around to get it. I thought, no, I'll just go with it. I was with my wife, knew that she had her phone. If anybody urgently needed to get in contact with us, well, that could still happen. So that, no, I will actually go without the device. And it did feel weird.
It does. It absolutely feels weird. Yeah. And I have an Apple Watch, and I love it. However, I don't have all the notifications on with that Apple Watch, but what I started experimenting with in the last month is that on Sundays and also during times where I really want to be focused, I do an all-day peer advisory meeting once a month. And I started wearing my old analog sector watch because I wanted to be fully focused during those times. But the habit was still there. So I have to, I'll find myself looking at my wrist, not because I'm looking at the time, but to see if I got a text. And when I realized I was doing that, even when I had on my analog watch, I thought, okay, I need to take a step back here and look at my behavior.
I have the when you're age 7 and you scrape your watch in the schoolyard playing football, you never wear a watch again. And I've never missed one. And because there's always somebody who does have a watch, and you can ask them what the time is. Nowadays, of course, I've got a phone and I can look at the phone to see what the time is. Or there's a church clock in our village, and it generally speaks the time correctly. So basically, at the end of the day, there's always another way around it, but you don't absolutely need a watch to get through. And so I don't know how many years, 50 odd years later, I've not really missed a watch, although I've been given them because of.
But there's Marcey looking at her watch for notifications, not time. I tend to look at my Apple Watch all the time to say, have I closed my move ring yet?
Oh, yes. That is a big one. How many steps have I gotten? Have I closed my move ring? I had somebody 2 weeks ago in one of my classes said that they got an Apple Watch, and she said, I feel like I'm addicted to the move ring.
Yeah.
I have to close that move ring. And she said, I don't know if that's bad or not, because I am moving more, but she said, I'm checking all the time. It's not like I'm looking once an hour or once every couple of hours. She's looking all the time.
Yeah, I was talking to a chap a couple of weeks ago who'd stopped wearing his Apple Watch because he was checking the heart monitor on it all the time, and he had a heart condition. And he was actually finding that checking his heart rate all the time was making him more stressed and actually aggravating the condition that it was supposed to be monitoring.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the workshops I give is on focus, and it's a focus power-ups. And I was doing it via Zoom, and there was a screen of 20 people on there. And I was talking about, if you get a notification, we were talking about notifications. And I said, turn them off, any kind of haptic on your wrist or pop up on your computer. You don't need them, especially if you're going to go to them anyway. You don't need them. And this woman started laughing. And so I asked her to please unmute herself. And she holds up her arm and points to her Fitbit. And she said, my Fitbit has gone off every hour to tell me to stand for 7 years. I've had a different type of Fitbit every hour, 7 years, to tell me to stand up. She said, I have never stood up when it tells me to stand up. And she said, it just went off as you were saying that to tell me to stand up. And she was laughing about it. And what we were talking about was just that all of those little distractions throughout the day, all of those micro decisions. And for her, it was to not stand up or stand up adds up, and it decreases your willpower and discipline over the length of the day, with all of those notifications. And we decided, just turn it off. It's not helping you. It actually might be making you feel worse about yourself. But regardless, if she's in the middle of a project or doing something, where she's heavily focused, then her focus was just ruined by this notification telling her to stand up when she wasn't going to do it anyway.
Yeah, because you're talking about using time intentionally. The notification is immediately provoking you to use the time reactively. There's a flash on my screen to say, here's a new email. Oh, here's a new WhatsApp message, and you'll go and look at it. Whereas
Yes.
turn those off, you can focus on what you're doing. But Marcey, what else do you need to do to use time intentionally? It feels as a whole mindset change here.
Oh, it's absolutely a mindset change. So to me, turning off the notifications really is the number one thing when it comes to devices and using time intentionally, because they are on as the default. And people tend to think that because they're on as the default, then that is the most efficient, most effective, most productive way, because why would it be any other way? And really, those are there to get us to use it more. Because
I'm of the school that would never turn a notification on anyway, because it's almost like big tech telling me what to do, and
good.
it's the wrong way around. I'm going to be non-politically correct, but if big tech is a love, it's the wrong way around love. I'm not doing that. I mean, you're my slave, not the other way around. And to be honest, every time a notification is prompted at the beginning of an app or whatever, no, absolutely not. Because I if I want you, I'll find you. I'm fairly clever. I can find you on the phone. And I think I cannot understand. I can understand the mentality of that lady up to a point, but the bit that really rankles a little bit with her story is that 7 years has passed with hourly notifications to stand up, and she's having an ongoing fight with a piece of tech around her arm.
Yes,
that's crazy. But I completely subscribe to your first time saving or whatever it is tip. Turn off the notifications, or in fact never turn them on.
Yeah, and Graham, you are in the minority. Really? That you don't have them on at all. And I'm always surprised. Well, I'm no longer surprised, actually, how many people just have them all on because that's their default. And when I've worked with, there have been a few companies that I've worked with that I say, across the board, start off with email pop-ups off, make people have to opt in and turn them on. They'll never do it. No. Start with Slack off, make people opt in if they must. Yeah. It makes it easier for people because a lot of times people don't know how to turn them off. They're just used to them, so they don't know any other way.
Wow.
Kevin, the second piece, just to take it away from notifications as far as intentional time, is that in the world that I'm in the type of people that I work with, they have meetings throughout the day, which I know you as podcasters, you have different meetings throughout the day. So you end up having these small chunks of time that you maybe you have 10 minutes here or 30 minutes here, or if you're lucky, you might have 45 minutes. And so you don't feel, instead of being very intentional about, I have X amount of time, and you look at your tasks and think, what can I get done and complete in X amount of time, which that sense of completion feels good for our brain, and it makes us less tired. It's more motivating. So instead of doing that, most people will just go for the easiest thing or the low-hanging fruit, or in most cases, they'll just go to their inbox. Because what can I do? What can I always do in, 3 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes? I can always go to my inbox. And our inbox is important, but it is rarely our most important, most urgent task of the day.
That's really
important. It doesn't cause us.
That's one of the tips that I saw from your website. You were talking about nuking the emails. You weren't using those words, but basically getting rid of the compunction to go to your inbox or having it live all the time. You talk about having granting yourself access to those emails twice a working day. Is that the typical advice that you give to people?
It depends. Whoops, sorry about that. It depends on the person and the role.
Right.
Because for some roles, like say an executive assistant, I would not tell them to just only look at their inbox twice a day.
I get that.
for the president of a company, or for, people and like maybe a design engineer or an architect or something, maybe they only need to be processing email once or twice a day, but it's not their default. Here's where I go when I don't know what else to do, or when I'm trying to procrastinate on something else. Instead, it's, either a certain number of times or when their top tasks are completed, but it really depends on the role.
Yeah. So you're flipping this around to saying, go and look at email or so on as a reward for doing things rather than as compulsion.
For some people, it could feel like a reward.
Yeah.
For sure. Like it's, because it's the easy thing. We're curious. We want to be in there. It could be the reward, or it could be, at the end of the day, if, I recommend at the end of the day, deciding, what are my top 1 to 3 priorities for the next day? Mm-hmm. What are the 1, 2, or 3 things, no more than that I would need to say is a win for me, to get them done. If I got them done, my day's a win. To at least get one of those done before hitting the inbox, because the inbox is always another person's agenda.
Yes.
And as soon as you go there, if you go there first thing in the morning, you've basically said, I have no agenda. I'm just going to live off whatever somebody tells me to do in my inbox. Again, your inbox is important, but who has interviewed for a job and said, I'm the best email checker ever? I am amazing at checking email. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. But that is where we spend a lot of our time.
Yeah.
And so really thinking, at least what is my top task? What is one thing that I need to get done before I hit my inbox? And that's a real behavioral shift for people, especially the ones that check their email first thing in the morning, sometimes even in bed. And I have a successful business, and I sometimes don't check email for the first time during the day until like 2 p.m. Now, if I'm expecting something important, then I may go and just search for their name to see if they've sent me something. But I use the Google Google Work platform. And one thing that's great about that platform over Outlook is that you can use something called Boomerang and Inbox Pause. And I can actually pause all my emails and I don't see them coming in except for on a timed schedule or if I unpause it, but I can exclude certain emails. So my top tier clients are never paused. Their emails always come in as they send them. My accountant, I always see my accountant's emails because I feel like if he sent me an email, I need to know what it is because it's about my money. His emails come in, and then I use HelloSign for all my contracts. So if it comes from HelloSign, those emails come in. So there are ways to, so I'm not distracted by like marketing messages or calendar invites or anything like that until I'm ready to process my email. And I process that email like a task. It's not something I go to as a default. It is, I go to it and it's like, this is my email processing time. I process them and then I go and I do something else.
So this explains something, Kevin. This explains why Marcey took 14 weeks to come back to us for our original email.
I did not.
No, you did not. I love that Southern accent. I really do. It's so refreshing. But you obviously, I love the idea that you would do something prior to opening up your emails. My emails are on the Mac and I don't know whether or not they have a similar facility. Probably don't.
No.
So it might have to be just a bit Heath Robinson, just turn it off and then say, okay, it's 10:30. I'll turn it on. So in other words, at the moment I am in the habit of it just loads up when I'm at my desk. I love the idea that no, you're not going to do that. You're going to do your first thing that you really need to do. And And before this, I had a conversation with another coach, and basically said, well, you want to do this for this one of my businesses, and if you don't do these things in the next 13 weeks, then you're not going to achieve this, and this. So get that in your diary and then get that done. There isn't any excuse if you don't do that. So I was thinking coming into this session, how on earth am I going to find the time to get these things done? And then I realized that we've got Marcey Rader on the on the podcast. You
do.
It's simple.
Well, I can help. Let me help you. Let me give you a couple more tips for that then. So 90, 50, and 25. So those are good times to remember. 90 minutes is about the maximum amount of time that a person can focus without losing productivity.
Yeah.
And 50 minutes is about the average, which is great. Well, 52 was exact with the study, but let's say 50. So if you work for 50 minutes and then take a 10-minute break, work for 50 minutes, 10-minute break, then, having those time constraints can be helpful for your brain and for your focus. Yeah. There's also the Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 on, 5 off. You do 4 rounds of that. And that's good for people with short attention spans, or if it's something that you just don't want to do. But it's important because people don't often think about their chronobiology, their circadian rhythm, and when they are most productive. I am a morning person. I am on fire in the mornings. I can just stand at my computer and I can work for long periods of time. So I do not schedule meetings before 9 a.m. And because that is my time. And in the afternoons, I'm coaching, I might be working on, I might be speaking, because I'm always going to get energy from clients and, on the Zoom and things like that. That doesn't matter what time of day it is. I would not save something that isn't very exciting for me to do or requires a lot of focus for the afternoon or evening time. And I was talking to another coach about this a few years ago. And she said, oh, I'm a real morning person. I start my coaching calls at 7 a.m. And I said, I'm a real morning person too. And that's why I never let anybody steal it.
Oh, nice. I bet she loves you.
Yeah. She had never thought about it before. She had never thought about that before.
But she's got this doll with Marcey Rader on it. And she's got these little pins now that she's sticking into this doll.
It probably is.
What a fantastic comeback. I mean, you are a very talented person. You speak as well. What kind of conferences do you speak at?
Oh, all kinds, because my message it's industry agnostic for the most part. Last week, I spoke for the National Rural Electrical Co-op Association. Before that, I speak for a lot of accounting industries, but mostly biotech and pharma. Biotech and pharma, because I worked in that space for 14 years. But
you'll be fairly busy at the moment, yeah? You'll be busy at the moment, yeah, I guess.
Just a little bit, a little bit. But really, it almost doesn't matter what industry you're in. Everybody is struggling with burnout and overwhelm and, overflowing inboxes and issues with notifications, and it's affecting their sleep, their relationships, their health.
Have you ever almost like taken a step back and said, who's to blame? Who's to blame for the fact that we bring kids into jobs and before you know it, they're overwhelmed? Who's to blame?
That's a great question, Graham. I don't like the word blame. I think blameless problem solving is the better way to look at it, because we're always responsible in some way. And, even with devices, I'm often telling people it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Because devices are designed to get us to use them more. The color red as a badge tells our brain it's urgent. It makes us want to click on it more. Every time we click on something, we get a dopamine response. Our brain gets used to this dopamine response. Like those are things that physiologically we can't prevent our brains from having that dopamine drip. But we also, or I should say, and from the perspective of our own ownership over that, we train people how we react and we train people how we respond. And if we train people that we are reactive and we reply within seconds to your text or to your email, then we train people that's what we do. And then they come to expect it. Mm-hmm. And I, even when I worked in corporate for a large company, mm-hmm. the most I processed emails 4 times a day. And towards the end of my career there, and nobody then, nor have they since I started my business 8 years ago, said I did not respond quickly enough, nor do I get those emails that say, did you get my email? Did you get my text? Because usually when people get those emails or texts, did you get my email? Did you get my text? It's because maybe Graham, whenever I text you, you always reply back immediately. So that's what I'm used to. So then if you decide to wait an hour, I think that you just didn't get it. But you trained me that that's how you respond or react to me. So I think that we also need to take ownership over our own behaviors as well.
Good answer.
Do you think, Marcey, though, there's a culture these days that people expect an instant reply to a message or an email, and kind of that's become ingrained into the way we work?
It depends on the company culture. I certainly don't. But I recognize that I'm the exception because of what I do. But I think that is very specific to the company and sometimes the team or manager. And that's one thing that I work on with teams is redesigning that culture. And with managers or people in hierarchical positions, it's really important for them to understand that it does not matter what they say, it is their actions that will set the tone. So if a person in a position of hierarchy says, hey, I might work during off hours, I might send an email on Sunday, but I don't expect you to respond. Don't worry about it. It does not matter that they say, don't worry about it. People under them will feel compelled. They will feel compelled to check or respond. And if they don't, then they may worry that their job might be in jeopardy, or that when performance reviews come around, that they're going to be seen as the person who takes 3 hours to email them back or emails them back on Mondays. And so I even have to go, it always starts from the top on, what that culture is going to be. Mm-hmm. But I have friends that I know, like very close friends that I know if I text them, I might get a response that day. It might be 2 or 3 days later. And then I have other ones that I know that they're, I'll hear from them within 30 minutes or whatever, just because they tend to be sitting on their phone.
Has anybody ever died because basically people haven't responded in rapid time? Died.
I know it.
I'm not medical. I'm not talking about. But has the emergency ever been that big an emergency with an email? If it's like, by the way, the office is on fire, it's a bit of a round robin, then fine, you might want to people to look at it and get out of there quickly, but you wouldn't use an email.
But you wouldn't send, exactly. You wouldn't you wouldn't do that in an email.
So what is it that, you see, back in the day, you might remember this, but back in the day, we used to have this thing like a buff envelope with, on the envelope, you'd sign to say that you'd seen the piece of paper in the envelope.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And that would go around the office. Now you might have seen that memo about a month and a half after it went to the first person, because it sits on somebody's desk and then they send it. Mm. It's obviously not that important. There's not that much in life that really is. Mm. But is there something that we can coach into people to get more real about the things that they're communicating about?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something else that I work on with teams and smaller companies, is that most of them do not have any kind of decision tree or communication channel or communication policy. if it is this type of message, these people need to be communicated to, not the whole team, not everybody. And in this way, this is an email, this is a text, this is a phone call, this might be a Slack message or something, this might be an instant message. And I'll use an example of a company that I worked with last year. They have 63 employees. I think they were about 6 years old. And so as the company grew, the CEO just, he kept being added on. He was on all the emails because the company grew so fast. And those people that were with him, in years 1 and 2, they always copied him, and so we had to retrain them that, okay, back when there were 7 of you, that made sense. Yeah. But, the $300,000 company is now a $50 million company, and he doesn't need to be on these emails anymore. And they made this beautiful, we made this beautiful communication channel or tree that they print out and can put by their desk that says, this type of communication, if it's a vendor issue, the VP and this gets caught, and Tracy gets copied or whatever. But most companies, they don't even think about having this kind of decision tree in place, because a lot of times when we copy everyone, it's because we're not sure who doesn't need to be, we don't want to leave anybody out. But if we go back to that memo that you're talking about, Graham, because I am old enough to remember those, you didn't send it around to 13 people. No. Probably, you just had a couple people, the main people that you needed to send it to. And we've gotten to this bad habit of thinking everybody needs to know everybody's business. Mm-hmm. And the more people you include in that, the less effective your decision-making is going to be. Absolutely.
It's just, it's just amazing what we, I suppose in a way, put up with in the past. But having said that, it did create enough time to be creative and for you to be able to have a life when you're at work, and actually a very productive life. Because the last thing I'd want to do is to go back into corporate now that I have my own businesses. I think I would just fizzle up and die. It would be so difficult to do. But what I would say is that the thing about what you're doing is you've talked about emails, you've talked about sort of timing of doing certain things. You also have on your website virtual assistants. That's another angle that you bring to the market, isn't it?
Yes, I am a big advocate of hiring a virtual assistant. I don't really like that term. I like virtual professional better. Okay. But virtual assistant is what everybody uses. We know what that means. But there's so much more than that. And I think the term is misleading and very underwhelming. Yeah. My business is 8 years old, and I had a VA. I hired a VA after my first year. And I can say without a doubt that I would have never grown my business as quickly as I did without one. I hired offshore, and for a couple of reasons. One, it was more affordable for me at the time, but I also like the idea. So my choice is to hire virtual professionals from countries that are politically and socially and economically disadvantaged. So I've had virtual professionals from Venezuela, Guatemala, Kenya, and the Philippines. And I had one for full time for 6 years. She was my full-time employee for 6 years. She just left me. So, a lot of times people think that it's just for one-off projects, or maybe that it's just part-time, but she was full-time. She had a degree in web design. She designed all of my websites, which I get loads of compliments on. I've had a CPA MBA from Kenya doing my books. I had someone with a master's in marketing doing my marketing from Venezuela. And so, thinking also like, what am I spending what is my time worth? Is your time worth $50 an hour, $100 an hour, $400 an hour, or pounds for you? And what would you be paying a virtual professional to do those tasks? And there are a couple of companies that I highly recommend. And one is called Virtual Latinos, and they have, of course, bilingual virtual professionals in Spanish-speaking countries. And then there is a company called iWorker, and they specifically specialize in those countries that are politically and economically disadvantaged. And I can tell you, worked with both of them personally, and highly, highly recommend and vetted.
Amazing. The idea of getting somebody from one of these countries, I'm not sure it would particularly work with our time frame, though.
Oh, sure. Yes, it absolutely would.
It would?
Absolutely. Yes, because they are so. First of all, from a time perspective, you have to ask yourself, do I need someone to work with me that day, like within those hours that day? Or is it like with Rhea, who was my full-time for 6 years? It was amazing because I'd wake up in the morning and everything would be done.
Yeah.
So there is an advantage. Yeah, there is an advantage to that. She was 12 hours ahead of me. So we would have like a 1 hour window in the morning. But then, when I worked with the woman in Kenya, I think they were like 6 or 7 hours ahead, but she was a real night owl, and so it really just depends on, do I actually need to have meetings with somebody, or, does it really matter?
Just get the work done. I have a kind of a personal question for you. I think one of the videos that I saw that you talked about was whether or not sleep is getting damaged by work, or is there a way in which you can improve the likelihood of getting better sleep by being more productive?
Absolutely. So there is a term that we use in the US called the Sunday scaries. I don't know if yes. Okay.
You're worried about the following week, about sort
You're
of
worried about Monday. You can't sleep on Sundays. So a lot of times when people are having issues, or they're waking up and they're ruminating, it's because of this of the workload that they have. But one of the best things you can do in the last hour before bed is to turn off your devices. Besides the fact that the blue rays from your device screen affect your circadian rhythm, suppress your melatonin, directly affecting your sleep cycle, it also, does not benefit you to read that email with yet another thing that you need to do or something, right before you go to bed. And it's too easy to do that. But, the percentage of people, and I don't know it off the top of my head, so I'm not going to pretend, but it is the majority of people, actually, do look at their phone in bed. And 1 in 3 people, I do know this statistic from a study that was done, 1 in 3 people admitted to looking at their phone in the middle of the night when they wake up. And, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't go back to sleep, when you pick up your phone, that is the antithesis of helping you to go back to sleep. Because of the brightness of the screen, but also what you end up doing on the device, like the scrolling and things like that, is actually going to keep you awake.
Yeah, you've engaged a very sleepy brain and started to make it quite active.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Marcey, one thing that I did want to ask you about, and you mentioned earlier that you work with a lot of accountants. So likewise, the business that I'm involved in works with a lot of finance leaders. Now, those folk, we've surveyed them quite a bit, and they've got probably 9 main issues, and we've ranked them in order. Number 1 is imposter syndrome, but number 2 is very definitely overwhelmed by tasks, so on. What would you be advising that kind of group of people, finance professionals and so on? if you were talking to them?
A few things. Once, get a virtual professional to take some of those tasks off your plate. And if they are people that are independent or their own business owner, it's more likely that they'll do that. It's $160 a month can take a lot off your plate. People who work for companies tend not to do that because people that work in companies don't like spending their own money on themselves or for coaching or for work development or whatever, or it's met with hostility if they tell people. So those people end up just doing it and not telling anyone about it. Also looking at the tasks or the, tasks that you have and what you want to do. And when you are truly in that state of overwhelm, asking yourself, only three, what are the three things that I need to get done this quarter? What are the three things that I need to get done this month, this week, this day? Everything else is just bonus. And because a lot of times I'll look at task lists from people and sometimes it's just stuff that's kind of nice to have and not really necessary. And when you are when they're telling me that they're overwhelmed, they don't have time for nice to have. Get rid of those, and they'll move them forward for months. It's just like, it's almost like the news, there or just learning in general. You're never going to be able to read it all. You'll never learn it all. And so just, pick the things that are important to you and move on. It's the work volume is the number one cause for burnout in 2020. So work volume.
There was something that you said there, that if you like, this power of three. Mm-hmm. So is that one of the things that you teach then? So you do three things today, which obviously are a subset of three things this week, subset of three things the week, the month, etc., and the quarter. Now, given that our podcast originally started as had a bit of focus on the next 100 days, we don't often talk about that anymore. Now it's we talk about anything, but this works really well with the original concept of the podcast.
Yeah. So there's a great book called The 12-Week Year. That's something I would recommend. One. Yeah, that I'd recommend to people. I was doing the 12-week year and I didn't even know that I was doing it because I have thought in these terms where, and if this were like a video podcast, I would pull my little whiteboard over here and show you. Yeah. But I have my quarterly priorities, my monthly, my weekly, and my day where I can see them. I can see them all the time. So whenever I start to get distracted, what are the three things that I'm really focused on? And if we move it into 100 days, that week before I go into that next quarter is when I am doing like the design time where I'm really thinking about, what are the things that are going to move the needle? Yeah. And I am the type of person, I am very action oriented. And if you know anything about the strengths finders, I'm maximizer, activator, so I'm very much a doer. Yeah. And so I would love to be able to do it all, but I limit myself to the three that are going to move the needle. And our brain remembers three. It remembers odd numbers better than even numbers. And anything more than that really just isn't a priority. It can't be.
No, I love that. There's a part of your website which your website, brilliant website person has done, and you've got 8 little boxes here: email extinguisher, which you've kind of talked about, time power-ups, focus power-ups, meeting power-ups, work well remotely, manage well remotely, everyday energy, which we've not really touched on, surviving business travel, which is we don't do that as much as we did, but I guess in America you have to do a lot of
I remember a consulting career where I need to survive business travel, Graham, where I was away from home 5 days a week. That would have been very useful back then.
Yes.
Well, I was always either on a plane or a train out of London, and to be honest with you, I don't miss that. But but as far as everyday things like everyday energy, what was interesting under that one, you said that overwhelmed by the health gurus who only care if you look good naked. Bloody hell, I'm going to have a problem with that, aren't I? I mean, well, I'm not even going to. I'll be digging a hole if I say anything else. But basically, is there something that we can do or should be doing to build that energy within us so that the rest of it comes together?
Yes. And I think the reason why I say that, and it's, are you tired of the health gurus that only care if you look good naked?
Yeah.
Is because we have become this, not me personally, because I'm actually not on social media except for LinkedIn, but with this Instagram culture, it has become so much more looks and image focused than health focused and how do I feel?
Yeah.
Because in my 30s, you would have thought I was the healthiest person in the room. I was doing Ironmans. I looked good in my clothes, but I actually was in such poor health. I triggered 3 autoimmune diseases. I went into menopause when I was 36, which is like 20 years too early. And I didn't feel good, but it doesn't, it really comes down to, do you feel good? And there are so many people, one of the things that I think is wrong with the wellness and health industry that we could do better is not focusing so much on the physicality of something. And I'm a very physical person. I love it, but letting people start where they are.
Yeah.
So, if you hate exercise, then let's first of all reframe it to movement opportunities. But that opportunity can be 30 seconds or it can be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour and you change your clothes, and you go to a gym, meeting people where they are. If you love sugary coffee and you're used to 6 pumps of mocha in your Starbucks every day in your grande frappuccino, can you ask for 1 less pump? And then 2 months later, ask for 3 less pumps. And we're so used to the really big, massive changes that we forget how much progress we can make with the little changes, because we build habits off of other habits. And so when you start at one place, then you can build on that.
Yeah.
Kevin, we could talk to Marcey for the rest of the day, but we're running really short on time.
We haven't mentioned Work Well, Play More either.
Oh, the book?
Yeah.
That, thank you. I am so proud. I'm so proud of that book, Kevin. It was my 3rd book. My first book, I say, was like recording in my parents' basement. My second book was like I went to Nashville, I recorded in a professional studio. And my 3rd book is like I went to Nashville or LA. It is one of the best things that I've done in my life, I think. And the way I set it up, it's called Work Well, Play More: Productive, Clutter-Free, Healthy Living, 1 step at a time. And it's 12 months. And every month there is a productivity, a clutter, which includes digital, physical, or mental, and health behavior to practice or experiment with. And each of those behaviors are in levels of novice, pro, and master. So anybody can pick up the book and start wherever they are, and I've had people that, read it and they do all the novice behaviors for a year. I've had a couple of other ones that, like say, I'll do the novice, and then the master and then the pro, and then I go to the next one and then novice, pro, master. And it's really cool to see the changes people have made with that book.
So if you've liked what you've heard so far in this podcast, maybe that's something to go and have a look at. We'll stick a link to that in the show notes, Marcey.
We certainly will.
Thank you.
And we, both of us, just want to give you a very big thank you for joining us today on the Next 100 Days podcast.
Graham, it's funny how themes keep coming back again. And we talked in there about the whole 100 days concept of taking a few days to plan it out and then sorting out the 2 or 3 most important things for the next 100 days. I had echoes of John Lamerton and Routine Machine, where John was telling us about making sure you got habits for doing everything. And John was talking about that thing about having 2 or 3 important things for the week that you had to get done. And I remember John's not to-do list is could-do list. Same sort of themes coming up.
I really love the idea of I don't know how I'm going to do this with the Apple apart from doing it, switch off, switch on. But basically, don't open the emails until you've done at least your first thing. And I'm very conscious that if I don't do that, there's part of me that needs to be conscious of client conversations coming through. And, Marcey, I think, has kind of figured that bit out. But actually, when you look at your email box, so much of it is delayable.
Funny, Apple have almost got wise to that one. I don't know if you've seen iOS 15 on any of your devices yet, Graham. But yes, iOS 15 actually allows you to put your phone into different modes at different times of the day. Now, in the past, you've just literally had airplane mode that switches stuff off when you're on a flight. But you can put it into work mode, into family mode, whatever. And you can tell it during the point of time it's in that mode, which people and which apps it's going to allow to send you stuff.
Okay,
I think that is the tech companies realizing something here, that they are overwhelming people and they've got to have a better way of doing it.
Yeah, I have a particular gripe with some of the tech companies, because not only are they trying to overwhelm you, but they're actually trying to influence you as well. And we're recording this on the day that Donald Trump has announced the launch of his new social media site called Truth. Truth.
And Graham, I was so unaware of the news and so filtering things out that all.
You wouldn't have known that. But
who might be the next Newcastle United manager? And by the time this podcast published, we probably know the answer to that one.
Well, I'm sure you will. There's all kinds of issues with allowing people into your life in terms of emails and so forth. So I learned an awful lot today. I think Marcey's been fantastic value. We've learned so much from her. I'm really grateful that she's come on to the next 100 days. So if you want to know more about Marcey, she has various websites, but you can actually get to Marcey, that's Marcey, Rader, RADER.com. So if you go to marceyrader.com, then follow your nose, you'll find exactly what you want to do. So today, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.